Thank you for choosing SUPERSEAM, the undetectable seam integration tool. Here are the tools that will be needed in creating the SUPERSEAM. You may find most of these tools at your local hardware store. A visible marker, tape measure, chalk line, carpet knife of choice, and extra blades. All SUPERSEAM installation procedures are based upon seaming two sections of synthetic turf together. The procedures are similar as you would do in your previous seaming procedures. If you follow the SUPERSEAM instructions, the end result will be magical. There are only 4 steps in creating the SUPERSEAM. Please understand, every project is different than the next, so make sure your layout and straight line is achieved on every SUPERSEAM cut. Step 1. Lay the two sections of synthetic turf to be seamed together as you would normally do in your previous seaming procedures. Grab both edges to be seamed and flip the edge side over approximately 1 to 2 feet with the back side of the synthetic turf to be faced up. This will allow the working surface to lay flat. Step 2. Measure 9 inches from each edge of section 1 and make a mark. From each mark, snap a chalk line from end to end to create a straight reference line for the SUPERSEAM tool to lay on. Repeat these procedures for section 2. Step 3. Lay the straight edge of the SUPERSEAM tool on the marked 9-inch line of section 1. This would normally start at the hardscape, the edge of concrete pavers or curbing. Take a carpet knife and cut the backing of the synthetic turf along the S side of the SUPERSEAM tool. Move the SUPERSEAM tool down the marked line, keeping the S pattern in sequence until you have reached the other end of the hardscape.
For more accuracy, mark with a gray Sharpie marker before making your cut.
When cutting section 2, you must offset the SUPERSEAM tool to the arrow reference marks located on the SUPERSEAM tool. Offsetting the SUPERSEAM tool to these arrow marks will allow both sections to integrate into one another. Lay the straight edge of the SUPERSEAM tool on the marked 9-inch line of section 2. Once the SUPERSEAM is in position, cut the synthetic turf along the S side of SUPERSEAM tool. Move the SUPERSEAM tool down the marked line, keeping the S pattern in sequence until you have reached the other end of the hardscape. Step 4. When sections 1 and sections 2 are cut, fold back each section with the grass side facing up. Take sections 1 and sections 2 and evenly pull them together. The SUPERSEAM method will integrate both sections together and magically cause the seam to disappear.
If you've purchased the SUPERSEAM Plastiflex, please follow the original SUPERSEAM layout directions. The SUPERSEAM Plastiflex is made of strong plastic composites. Its flexibility allows it to be stored in an easy-to-carry bucket along with tape measure, markers, and cutting tools. When using the SUPERSEAM Plastiflex tool, use a gray Sharpie marker and trace the S-shaped side of the SUPERSEAM tool. Move the SUPERSEAM tool down the chalk line, keeping the S pattern in sequence. With a carpet knife, cut the backing along the marked S pattern until you have reached the other end of the hardscape.
Now, enjoy the magic of SUPERSEAM, the undetectable seam integration tool.